Social justice warriors demand that privileged white elites give up their places in Ivy League colleges so that less qualified minorities can take their places. Now, I like this, right? Do you think that the typical white liberal's going to do it? I don't think they're going to do it. All those progressives who care about the black experience, but this takes a little chutzpah of social justice warriors. Hey, liberal, white, rich people, don't send your kid to a real good college because that just reinforces racism. Let some kid who can barely read go instead. This is equity. See, it really doesn't matter what those white families decide. Ivy League schools have already adopted that plan anyway. And sorry to break the news to you. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the ever-informative Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. As you know, we are the only program that keeps you educated. The craziness of back to K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66%. That's a lot more than 50% at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke, D-R-D-U-K-E. Support us by supporting MyPillow. See, we support you, they support us, your pillow supports everybody. Everybody wins. Again, save up to 66% at MyPillow.com. And today we start in Texas, where social justice activists are telling white liberals that you will not send your kids to Ivy League schools, you will voluntarily give up those seats, and we will enroll black and other marginalized students. One codicil, if you're unwilling to do so, we are going to dox you. We are going to release your information, we are going to harass you. You either give up your Ivy League privileged seats to our minority kids or else. I'm just loving this. Just loving it. Yep. White liberals versus angry black social justice warriors. Who will win?
So Dallas Justice Now is the group in Texas who is social justice activists, and they want the wealthy white liberals not to send their kids to the Ivy League schools because these spots have to be open for, quote, students from Black, Latinx, and other marginalized backgrounds. Other marginalized backgrounds.
That would be trans, queer, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, we
and
are.
You know what I love about this? Can I just say it again? There's no recruitment effort whatsoever at the Ivy League schools to come after conservative kids. Wealthy conservative kids are not welcome. They sometimes get in, but they're not necessarily welcome at Harvard and Yale. It's rich, libby white people. That Dallas, what's the name of the group? The
Dallas Justice Now.
Dallas Justice Now. DJN is coming for you, white liberals. Will you answer the call? Will you live up to your own hypocritical values? Will you actually, rich white liberal Karen moms, will you actually say, my student has been accepted for Yale for fall of 2021. I'm going to request that Yale remove him and replace him with the minority of your choice. In fact, we'll give you this. We'll let you do this, white liberals. You can pick which minority replaces your kid. I'm pulling Johnny. I guess it would have Dallas, right? It'd have to have a Texas twang. I'm pulling Johnny out of Yale. But I wants to see what? What do we wants to see? How about a transgendered, wheelchair-bound, Afro-Caribbean toe dancer? How about that?
Toe dancer?
I don't know. In that wheelchair? But we'll allow you, Texas, you rich, wealthy liberals, to decide who replaces your white bread kid at Yale. It's not going to happen.
No.
We know it's not going to happen, but it would be something. If you liberals believe what you say you believe, it's time to pony up. Time to put your money where your mouth is. Liberals not going to do it. I didn't think so.
Okay, well, at least according to the pledge, they are urging all these white liberals to sign or make whatever. They released this pledge as a press release, and they said basically, who they are. They're a group of this and that, and they're white liberals and blah, blah, blah. They say, we want to open up spaces for Black and Latinx communities by refusing to send your kids to Ivy League and U.S. News and World Report top 50 schools.
That's more than Ivy League.
That's more than Ivy League.
I bet you Texas Austin's on that list.
Yes. And by signing the pledge, they say, as a white person with privilege, both from my whiteness and my neighborhood, I recognize the need to make sacrifices for the purpose of correcting hundreds of years of murder, slavery, discrimination, and lack of educational and economic opportunities perpetrated upon people of color. I understand that access to top schools is a key component in economic and social advancement.
Ooh, Mr. Carter, can I ask you a question?
I will keep reading after, yes.
Aren't those very schools that you want to get the kids in hallmarks of institutional racism? Mr. Carter? Mr. Carter, is it not true that among the most systemically racist, they just mentioned it, education, right? One of the key components of racist white society is the bias at universities and public schools. Why would you want to send your Black and Latinx kids to those schools in the first place? I mean, what can they expect? According to the attitude of the Dallas Buyers Club here, what can they expect other than racial discrimination when they get there? Any Mr. Carter?
Well, that's why they're going to sign this pledge instead.
I will let you go back to reading the story.
Yes.
Now.
Therefore, I commit that my children will not apply to or attend any Ivy League school or U.S. News and World Report Top 50 school, so that position at that school is available for people of color to help correct historical wrongs. If I do not have children under 18, then I will commit to encouraging my white privileged friends, neighbors, and family members with children to sign the pledge and holding them accountable until they do so.
Katie, is there a or else in this story?
There's a little bit. Just a little one. They did say that the group will publish the names of those people who have and who have not signed the pledge in their communities, and urge recipients not to be a racist hypocrite. Perhaps ironically, the group's website also says, respect your privacy, that we respect your privacy.
Can you see a rich liberal Texas couple sitting around the table, around the potbelly stove?
No,
talking
but okay.
to Johnny.
Talking to Johnny, sure.
Now, we're all proud of y'all now for getting into Yale up there with all them Yankees, but we got to tell you now, in the name of our social justice values, we're going to send you to the 2-year college down the road. You're going to go to Stephen F. Austin. We're going to send you Stephen F. Austin 2-year associate program. How about that, Johnny? You okay with that? Would you love to see the look on Johnny's face? I'd love to be a fly in that room.
Well, we know all about Baltimore and how many students are not getting an education in the Baltimore. But did you know that there's like a second Baltimore, and it's Washington, D.C., this nation's capital, where they are basically fighting to have spending the most money while also not having any education be given. Now, according to the report by Education Data, they provided data about spending per student and basically how that compares then to dropout rates and to education with math, reading levels. There's a plethora of data. So if you love being a data nerd like me, you should dive right in. Again, it's by Education Data. They just recently pulled all this information. Now, when you compare spending per student in these K-12 public schools at the local, the state, and the federal level then, they found, and this is in conjunction also, I should say, with Wallet Hub, who is talking about the actual spending, that DC spends the third highest amount in the nation at $22,847 per K-12 pupil. $22,000, so basically $23,000 per student, and they rank 37th out of 51 states, because they're including DC. So out of 51, 37th. They have the highest dropout rate at 31.1%, and they rank 47th, again out of 51, in math scores and 49th in reading scores. And of course, they are last in the median SAT scores. So what does that all say to you, Dr. Duke?
It says this is what happens when you systemically allow progressives to control systems. We don't have a systemically racist culture. We have a systemically Democrat culture when it comes to education, a systemically progressive culture when it comes to education, which is to say a completely failed, shockingly expensive, unaccountably exonerated from the fact that with the more money we give those progressives, racially progressive school systems, the less better they educate our kids, the worse they are at reading, writing, and math, the more money we give them, the more privilege and gaudy retirement packages we get these teachers and these teachers union members. What are you getting for it? You want to fight discrimination in this country? Then strip liberals and progressives of all control over the schools right now. That's from preschool all the way through graduate school. Put somebody else in charge. I'll go the William F. Buckley way here, right? I'd rather have the first 200 names in the Boston telephone book run American public schools than the progressive educrats that do. You could not do a worse job if you threw darts at a telephone book to decide who the next Secretary of Education was going to be. You could not do worse for our kids than is being done. Not only are our American kids, by this progressive, systemic, racist, anti-American, or overseers, these progressives, not only are kids being educated at the worst level since pre-Civil War days, you are actually changing the nature of their schools away from learning altogether and teaching them lies about American history, about economics, about history. Congratulations. So the only real systemic problem we have in this country is the systemic control of education by clueless, politicized, and destructive liberal progressives.
And when you look at the overall spending in the whole nation, K-12 schools spend $640 billion, which on the average, you just do the simple math on that, and it's $12,624 per pupil. Okay, when you look at federal, state, and local government's budget, you add that all in, it's $734.2 billion, which goes up then to $14,484 per pupil. Okay, so you have to look at your state, how it compares ranked at the local, the state, and the federal level.
And can you imagine if they actually provided money for both eyes instead of just the one pupil? It would be twice as much.
Wow, it would really, for any of those who have a third eye.
Rim shot.
Dork.
And which
Now,
all this bookkeeping is to show you just how shockingly unnecessary all this money is. You don't need money to educate kids this way.
Well, and on top of it, this is something you've been preaching all through the Common Core years. The federal government spends 7.8% on the public school education. So only $1,131 per student is coming from the federal government. So why is it that everyone adopted Common Core from the national when it's your state and your local municipality, especially your state, which is spending the bulk money on educating your child? It should be at the state level and the local level, not at the federal level.
It shouldn't even be at the state level, but fight one battle at a time. Did you hear what she just said? Nationally, only 7.8% of the money that your kids is spent on your kids in public schools, only 7.8% comes from the federal government. Do you really need that 7% so badly that you will turn over control of your kids' schools to the public entity? Is that the cost you're taking for critical race theory? You're willing to get critical race theory for 8%?
Well, and it's percentage maybe $1,100. How much money did Joe Biden give you this past year?
Yep.
For $1,100, put it this way, will you turn over just what you said, your children to critical race theory, to sexualization in schools, to not learning to read, to not learning to write, to not learning to think critically, to not learning to do math? $1,100. Is your kid's life worth that $1,100?
That you just got in COVID relief. And it's one of the great ironies about this racist, progressive educrat system that we've been talking about here, that all that money the Department of Education is spending, we know that there was all the billions and billions and billions of dollars of COVID funding that didn't get where it was supposed to go. We made this big show in Congress about, and if we even, half the time we didn't bother to go through Congress to approve this stuff, sending out this kind of money. Turned out that was billions of dollars left over of money that was supposed to be for COVID relief. And guess where that money went thanks to Joe Biden? It went to the Department of Education so they can promote, by bribes, federal bribes, that you know them as grants, right? Federal bribes to take things like critical race theory.
It's another day, so it's another example of a student blasting a local school board, with reason, of course. We have a fourth grader from Sartell St. Stephen School District in Minnesota. Her name is Haley Yasker, who she attends Riverview Intermediate School, and she said that her teacher told her that she must complete this equity survey, and this was, online with all the Zoom classes and all that we had, but she must complete an equity survey and she could not skip any of the questions. Even if she didn't understand them, she still needs to answer them. And she, by the way, don't repeat any of these questions to your parents. Let's watch her.
During distance learning, I was asked to complete the equity survey. My teacher said that I could not skip any questions even when I didn't understand. One question asked us what gender we identified with. I was very confused along with a lot of other classmates. A boy in my class asked my teacher if his mom could explain the question to him because even after the teacher explained it, he still didn't understand. My teacher told him that he was not allowed to ask his mom and that we could not repeat any of the questions to our parents. I want the school board to know how uncomfortable and nervous this made me. My mom always tells me I can tell her anything, but she also tells me I can trust my teachers too. Being asked to hide this from my mom made me feel very uncomfortable. I was doing something wrong.
What she basically was talking about is how difficult it was to have to conform to this without telling her mother. This is a young little girl who has been taught to tell her mother anything. She can talk to her mom about anything. And you got these public schools, these autocrats in public schools telling these little kids, and this isn't something you have to wake up to, Mom and Dad. Do you understand how often, every day, every week, every month, do you know how often the public schools are turning your kids into guinea pigs? How they're giving them surveys, and outside groups like Planned Parenthood and others are bringing in surveys and charts to fill out, and all sorts of assignments that are data gathering assignments for all sorts of secondary corporate and political interests every day. One thing I would ask you to do, Mom and Dad, don't just ask your kids what they're learning in school. Ask them, were you asked to fill out any data today? Did anybody ask you to fill out an opinion survey today? You're going to be stunned at how often your kids are being mined day to day about all this progressive gerrymandering going on in the public schools.
And the thing is, the parents in this district are concerned about what's happening in the district and how they are pushing critical race theory onto their students. And so according to Alpha News, the school district actually hired Equity Alliance Minnesota, EAM. It's a left-wing activist group, and they're going to conduct an $80,000 audit. That's where this survey was coming out of it, because they're doing an $80,000 audit on racial inequities within the district. And the group actually describes itself on its website as a group that has been leading culturally relevant learning since 1995.
1995.
It's been since the 90s they've been
culturally relevant. That's one of those buzzwords. When you hear culturally relevant education, you can think not real education at all. It's education being modified by all the politically correct buzzwords and theories.
And they use the buzzwords because they describe themselves as working to make educational ecosystem across Minnesota equitable for every single student. And their mission is to be the leading force for systemic educational equity and integration through collaborative learning and advocacy. Equity, systemic, integration. These are all the buzzwords that
and these are the same idiots.
The same buzzwords.
They will use those buzzwords and then turn around and said, because we don't use critical race theory because we notice that we didn't mention systemic equality, all of that, white privilege, white supremacy. Did you hear the word critical race or theory? Therefore, we don't teach critical race theory.
And so, as you saw the $80,000 audit, the survey happening, so at the school board meeting where the young girl spoke, then there were more than 100 people who showed up to that school board meeting, and many were up there to oppose that audit. And parent organizer Chris Yaskar, who I assume is either mother or father, to the young girl, said bullying is going unchecked because discipline isn't there, since the audit is taking away money and time for mental health issues. CRT advocates pretend the debate is about teaching racism and slavery. It's designed to do the opposite. I think it's a sign of their position's weakness that they keep returning to this line. Yup, that's that nailhead. You nailed it. Now, Yasker said the parents group has requested a copy of the equity survey that, the kids weren't supposed to say anything about. They wanted a copy because this is a public school. Give me a copy of that survey. Well, it's been weeks, and I don't know. I guess the
Nope.
school board can't find it. Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing.
And you know as well as I do, the fact that they won't turn over the survey
Means-
because they know saying they lost it is going to cost them a lot less than actually turning the document over. It's time for some real education. We mentioned that this is Olympics week on the Dr. Duke Show. No, and if you watched the show last week, you may remember we were pretty bold about saying we weren't going to watch the Olympics, that we weren't going to take the Olympics seriously, that we weren't even really, I hate to say it, rooting for the American teams, many of them, simply because of their ungratitude. Look, when you sign up to be an Olympian, you are not playing for yourself. You are not competing for your own glory. You're doing that under the banner of the nation that hosts you, the nation that in many cases like America has spent a lot of money on you, helped with training, helped with accommodations, helped you become the athlete that you are now. It's funny, isn't it, that liberals always believe you didn't build that. Except when it comes to things like this, liberal athletes protesting at national games, international games. So this week we're doing the instant classic on some quotes about the nature of sports, on how they go together or don't go together. Take a look at this quote from an activist by the name of Alice Dreger. I believe that's how her name is pronounced. Quote, "No matter how little we think anatomy should matter to one's social and political rights, surely we can't pretend that biology doesn't matter in sports. Surely there's a reason we don't let adults play in the T-ball leagues, and there is a reason that most women athletes want their own leagues." Thank you, Ms. Dreger. I don't know your politics. I don't know your worldview. I would be surprised if it wasn't very different from mine, and yet you hit the nail on the head. Is it really sports? Is it sporting? Think about what the word sporting means. That's where the word sports comes from. Sports is an abbreviation of the word sporting. When you ask yourself this question, is that contest, is that football game, is that chess match, is that darts game, is it sporting? In other words, are there rules? Is it fair? Is it administrated equitably, if we could use that term? Is it fair and above board? Does everybody playing have to subscribe to the same rules? That's what sporting means. And when you're allowing anatomical, biological men into women's sports, even though, like weightlifting, even though that man who became a woman really flopped so far at the Olympics. He's not doing well as a she. Nevertheless, why are we allowing this to happen? Biology, anatomy, age, those things matter with regards to sports. It's not sporting anymore if you're flooding women's games with biological men. That's not sporting. And Mrs. Dreger is exactly right.
Well, all right. Those are the stories for today. If you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it in the mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And if you enjoy our content, please support our show by joining the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And as a special thank you, we will ship you our signature tumbler.
And that wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends. And that almost always means stay out of the public schools.